Hello and welcome to Supervision Smörgåsbord, a podcast full of tips, tricks, and interviews with experts to help you enjoy being a supervisor. Here's your host, Dr. Tara Sanderson.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back. Thank you for joining me here today as we talk to yet another supervisor. This supervisor interview is with Jamie Watson. Jamie is a licensed marriage and family therapist in Oregon and Washington, and the mental health therapy director at Neurotherapeutic Pediatric Therapies in Portland and surrounding areas. At the University of Western States, Jamie teaches play therapy, pre-practicum, and human growth and development in the Graduate Department of Counseling. Jamie is a registered play therapist supervisor and is also recognized by the Oregon Board of Licensed Professional Counselors and Therapists and the Washington Department of Health and the American Association of Marriage and Family Therapists as an approved clinical supervisor. She has additional training in foster and adoptive therapy, parent-child interactive therapy, and trauma-focused CBT, specializing in child attachment and trauma. Jamie currently serves as the president of the Oregon Association for Play Therapy and has been involved with the board and the Oregon Association of Play Therapy in some capacity for over a decade. Jamie lives in Clackamas, Oregon with her two young boys, husband, and their golden doodle, who is also a therapy dog. Jamie, you have done some amazing things, and thank you so much for spending some time with me here.
Of course. Thanks for having me on the show. You listed out everything, and I'm like, wow, that's a lot. You don't
Right?
realize until you're like there.
Yes, it is a lot, and you have worked hard for all of those accolades, and I want to honor that for sure. Jamie, we start all of our interviews with a random guest question. So your random question today is, what fictional character would you most like to be friends with?
Okay, so I read a lot and I'm a fantasy reader. I love fantasy books. And so I think that I would probably like to be friends with the main character from Fourth Wing. I don't know if
Okay.
you're familiar with the Fourth
I
Wing.
have not read Fourth Wing yet.
I just think that it would be so cool. Not to mention that there's dragons and stuff. I don't know. I think that would be really fun to just kind of be a part of and be friends with them in general.
Yes. Yes, I think so too. Anything that has dragons in it seems like a really good time to me, whether it's, I don't know. I just think dragons are amazing. So I do. Fourth Wing is on my little TBR list. I shouldn't have said little. It's not a little TBR list. My TBR list is huge. But it is on there and it's sitting there. There's just so many good books out right now that I don't know how to get through my list.
Well, the third book in the series just came out this month, like literally like a week ago. And there's just been this huge, just so many people are reading it right now. So if you want to get on the bandwagon, now would be a good time.
Now is the time.
Now is the
Okay,
time.
so a little self-disclosure. I didn't start reading the Harry Potter series until book 6 was out.
Okay.
So I take a while to grab onto the things. But once I got into the first book as that was happening, I mean, it was a short circle of time by the time I got through all of those because it was just voracious at that point. Yeah.
That's how
So we'll see.
Yes. Okay. Well, at least it's on your TBR amongst all the
It
rest.
is. It is. It's sitting there. It's waiting. I definitely have to weave in maybe I alternate a little bit of books for therapy that I want to read because it's going to better me as a therapist and books for me. And I try and make sure that I'm getting some even ground in there
That's
because I
excellent.
can't, yeah, I can't just stick to one category.
Right? I'm currently reading The Connected Therapist by
Ooh,
Smith. And she's an occupational therapist, but she kind of incorporates, movement and sensory somatic stuff into therapy. And
love it.
I'm currently co-hosting a group supervision slash educational series with a woman in Portland as well. Her name's Mary Ann Reed. And we're reading that book with our supervisees throughout the series. And it's so
Cute.
cool. I love it. Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah, that's amazing. I have joked a lot. I have gone to physical therapy to the same guy for probably, I don't know, off and on for several years for different things as your body kind of does what it does. And I joke with him all the time that he and I should write a book together because of some of the just some of the mirrored stuff that we go through with our physical bodies and our mental health. And like some of the things that he'll say to me as I'm complaining about, like, of course I didn't do my exercises during the week. I do them when I show up in this meeting with you. And he looks at me and he's just like, does that sound familiar? And I'm like, crap, my clients say that to me all the time.
Right?
Um, and we just have these little moments of like, I joke so often that we really should just write a book together. Of physical therapy and mental therapy have so many interwoven concepts, and even this idea of like movement and occupational therapy as a component of the work that we do, so valid.
Yeah.
It's
I think
amazing.
before you rewrite another, like, before you oh, what's the word, reinvent the wheel or whatever, you should give that the connected therapist a read. It's really good.
Yeah,
Not that
yeah, yeah.
I'm plugging for myself, I'm plugging for Marty Smith, but she's a great writer and she's amazing and whatever.
I mean, sounds lovely. I'm totally in. Yeah, I'm going to put that in the show notes for anybody who wants to look, for sure. Well, we had talked about having you come on board and talk about how utilizing play therapy in supervision, about what it is like being a supervisor for play therapy, talking about working with clinicians who are getting their MFT. Because I feel like as I looked back in my past shows, I have very few MFT supervisors who have come on the show. And I don't know if that's like, because they're all busy just working and living their lives and they don't want to be on my show, or that I just specifically have, more LPCs and psychologists that I happen to know, or what it is. But I'm so excited to hear about maybe even thinking about like the differences of how things are applied, or creative ways that you utilize those specific mindsets and skills to help our students and our trainees and our pre-licensed folks. So I'm going to open the door with like, tell me all about being a supervisor for MFT candidates and for play therapy folks. What are some of the things that you've learned, and share with us your great knowledge?
That is like such a good question. Where to start? So when I was in my internship, I had a really cool supervisor who said to me basically, well, he had asked me a question along the lines of like, when you have this person in your office individually, and they're telling you all about this stuff that's affecting their day, what's your first thought? And I'm like, oh, well, I wonder if anybody's there to support him, this client, this fictitious client. And my supervisor was like, yeah, I don't know that you can even think individually. Your brain just supports systemic thinking. Like there's no way of dividing the two. And I was like, yeah, that's a really good point. And so whenever I think of clients or even supervisees or really anybody in the world, I think of all of the factors that influence them in general. And so when I got my license, I was like, I have to be a supervisor because I feel like there are a lot of clinicians in the world of therapy who just don't consider the systems involved with the individuals who are seeking services. And that was a really big, important piece to me. The other big, important piece to me as a supervisor was that not a lot of people are willing to work with kids. And it makes me so sad, especially kids who have been diagnosed with autism or who have some type of neurospiciness to them. It's like therapists run the other direction. They're looking for somebody who is able to communicate their wants, needs, and desires. Somebody who's willing to go home, do the homework, come back and be like, yep, this is what happened. And it's just, there's a whole world of clients who need support. So my goal in life in becoming a supervisor was to make sure that I was taking on as many interns as possible to kind of broaden their scope of practice, even if they never wanted to work with kids in the future or do like neurodevelopmental therapy. At least they'd have some kind of experience or knowledge in that field. And to make sure everybody was thinking systemically because it just doesn't, I mean, you'd be surprised at how much people just don't think systemically, and it's mind-boggling to me. So I have like such a huge passion for supervision and supervising those who are just like super green in the field, to even like just doing consultation for those who are just learning about kids or neurospiciness or whatever it might be. I love it. It's one of my favorite things.
I wonder if there is, and I don't need to go off on too big of a like global tangent, but I wonder if when we really made a push as an industry to be part of the medical community, if that's a part of why so many people stayed individualistic, right? When I think about functional medicine folks, when I think about people who are doing, medicine across a variety of things, that often, the medical community looks at them as othered, and we go kind of like, oh, are you practicing inside your scope? Like, are you doing the right things? Like, how can you do all a generalist kind of way of thinking or global way of thinking? And we kind of just go, oh, no, you stay with these symptoms, or you do this one thing and we stay in this one lane, right? And I wonder if that was a little bit more of a detriment to our industry than I think we maybe even would like to say.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I feel myself as a professional go, yeah, but I don't know enough about like some of the other things that are involved. A girlfriend of mine was just asking me about the intersection of food and diet with mental health. And I was like, girl, I know that it exists for sure. What we eat absolutely
Yeah.
impacts our mental health and our brain and our functioning 100%. And I did not get any training in that, like, at all in my grad programs. I would have to go for another degree. I'd have to go to become a nutritionist or a dietitian or add a whole new component to my world in order to see that intersection. And I'm not even sure that if I went and got that degree, that they would teach enough of that intersection. I think I would have to be like figuring out how to, and at that point, oof, it just gets so messy. And I keep coming back to that more and more, instead of us all trying to be everything to everyone, developing that communal network
Yeah.
is a factor that helps so much. Of, if I am not going to work with kids, then I have to have somebody that is my go-to gal on working with kids, so that
Yeah.
when I do end up working with a kid or I need a referral for this piece, like, I know exactly who to go to and somebody that I trust with this little life that I'm going to be working. Or in the same way with their medical care, or if they're going through menopause, or if they need a physical therapist. Like, if I can't be all the things, I got to have a community to build around the people that are involved in my world.
Yeah.
Anyway,
It's so important. Well, you said so many things that I had so many thoughts of when you were talking, and like, the gut microbiome. Just read a couple of research papers on that. You'll learn so much, and it's just nuts how much that affects your mental health. But that's like we could literally talk for an hour about that. And there are nutrition therapists out there, like therapists who have their master's degree or their doctorate degree in therapy, doing things about nutrition and anyway, that's a whole nother topic. But it's interesting with MFTs because we are the bottom of the barrel, which is just nuts in my mind, because we've had so much training in regard to like master's programs. Clinical mental health has, let's just say 120 credits. MFTs have 160 credits to graduate, and we're still the bottom of the barrel. It goes social workers, LPCs, and then LMFTs, which is just mind boggling to me. The other thing is that there's this wave. It starts on the East Coast where MFTs are like the top notch therapist. You'd want to be an MFT or nothing. And then you get all the way over to the West Coast and it's like, yeah, we weren't even recognized, or even like we weren't even able to bill insurance until this decade. Like, it was, I mean, it's just craziness to me, how I don't know. It just doesn't compute that systemic therapists aren't supported or needed more. And you mentioned like you haven't had a lot of MFTs on your podcast, and I'm like, that makes sense, because to be honest, it's easier to get your LPC and then become a supervisor as an LPC versus an LMFT, because hours are different and everything's so different. Um, yeah, that's probably why. There's probably not enough of us. That's why.
yeah. And even the ones who got the training might just go and get their LPC because it's just easier to do that instead of taking that extra layer or doing those pieces. I actually just ran into somebody the other day who had both licenses here in Oregon. And my first thought was like, why would you do that? Like, number one, you're paying two license fees. That seems ridiculous. But also, like, what does that give you in that world, except for it, it does give you some like
Correct.
ownership of, yes, I did all of this, I qualify for all of this, and good for them.
I've
But
also
it does get complicated.
I've also heard that the MFT board exam, the national board exam for MFTs, is way more difficult than the NCE. And it has been proven to me. I've had some supervisees and people who they know who have all failed the MFT board exam once, twice, multiple times. And then they go and they take the NCE, pass it, good to go. You can have your license as an LPC. So it's like, why? Why are we
Yeah,
doing
there is some systemic problems in this scenario that definitely need to be addressed, for sure, for sure.
Yeah. I will say that, I feel like becoming a supervisor is, um, it's not easy, but it's not tumultuous. Unless you're an MFT wanting to be nationally recognized as an AAMFT approved supervisor. But I think that what comes with that is even more systemic training, even more training to help those who aren't systemically trained become systemically trained. And you have all these extra hours of working on that and being with another AMFT approved supervisor as a mentor and all of that. Whereas, yeah, there's supervision of supervision. I think Oregon only requires 6 hours, I believe, of supervision of
Yeah.
supervision, which is like nothing. AMFT requires 35 hours of supervision, which I think is fantastic. So it's just there's a lot of levels of requirements and everything to get those credentials and become trained in systems, but I think it's worth it.
I mean, when you were just talking about that, I was thinking about, okay, so there's the basic, becoming a supervisor. But if you're going to become a supervisor for using EMDR, or you're going to become a supervisor for using ERP for OCD treatment, or if you're going to become a supervisor for play therapy or other things, it's the same thing. You're utilizing, in addition to your basic skills, you're learning a whole new subset. And with when we're talking about doing work with MFTs and systems work, we're talking about a whole new subset of work that we are putting on top of our regular counseling degree. So it makes total sense why you would have to do more supervision of supervision, more training in those ways, and more like concentrated effort, because you would do that if we were talking about EMDR. You do that
Yeah.
if we were talking about ERP, because it's an entirely other way of adding on to the basic work of counseling.
Yeah. See, and that as I started talking with you about my supervisor as an intern, saying I can't think unsystemically, if that's even a word, you're talking about that. And I'm like, but doesn't it just make sense to start there? To start reading? I just don't get it. How does it do it? How do we go backward? Like, how do we not think system? But that's just my
Yeah,
brain. That's my work. Yeah.
yeah,
It's
that's
crazy.
incredible. Yeah,
Yeah.
what
And
a world we live in, for sure.
I know. And the other side of things, becoming a registered play therapist and supervisor, that was just I'm sitting here looking at a pile of Legos on my table. Like if that doesn't tell you who I am individually, but I love I love playing with children. I think it's really important that we have some concepts of how play is utilized with children and communicating, and whether it's thinking about play themes or just sitting with a child with toys, using that as the modality for communication. I think there needs to be a lot of training and a lot of educating those who are working with children. I know that the Association for Play Therapy was jokingly, which I think is uh, I have my own thoughts about it, was jokingly saying that they think that everybody that works with children should have their registered play therapy or therapist credentials. So eventually, somewhere down the line, 10, 15, 20, 30 years from now, fighting to have all or all child therapists be registered play therapists so that they can account for their education, their supervision, and their experience, so that they can work with children in a way that supports them best. And I'm like, yes, let's do it. I think that would be amazing.
Yeah, because I mean, gosh, when you're talking about working with children, I mean, whether it is, official play therapy or even art therapy or other types of like alternative kind of ways of doing things, that's the world in which they speak and learn. I was at a training, I can't remember what it was, a long time ago, but I remember the lady talking about talking to a room full of people who weren't doing specifically work with littles. They were kind of doing more work. I was in there because I worked with teens, but she was kind of just giving across the board, kind of thinking about how you work with people who are probably not going to go home and do the homework, people who are not adults with like, here's my agenda for this therapy session kind of thing. Mostly people who probably were brought there by a parent in some fashion. And I remember her talking about the volley, and she just talked a lot about like kids like send off this signal, whether it's by facial expression, play, their tone of voice, what they actually say, movement in the room, all of these things. They volley this information over, and it's your job to read the volley and respond back in a way that is going to be therapeutically appropriate to wherever you're getting, right? Whether that's building connection and rapport, whether that's challenging them, whether that's trying to piss them off so that they can, do some, regulation skills, whatever it is. And that your job is to read the volley and get it back, and then your next level job is to work within their family system to teach their parents to read the volley and be able to respond back to it. And I just remember sitting there in that moment and thinking about every time I had worked with a teen or a kid or whatever, and how a big component of my job was really just playing tennis all the freaking time, of like listening and reading, not just listening with my ears, but listening with my whole person, of like, when did they touch me? When did they drag my hand to something? When did they hand me a thing? When did they give me what they wanted in their play of like, I'm handing you this thing that I'm going to tell you is a pterodactyl, even though I look at it and it is not a pterodactyl, but to them it is absolutely a pterodactyl. And we are playing this as if it's a pterodactyl. Right. And having to think from these like direct level places to these honoring of their experience places to these levels of like, how do I align with you in this moment? When are the times where I challenge you in this moment? I super duper love playing like Jenga and Uno with kids, for the sheer fact that those are things that like regularly make them have to use their distress tolerance skills that I also have to teach them, right? Like, because it's also such a great mirror for like life just happens. Like you can do everything right, and sometimes things just happen, right? And those elements are so important in the process. And I think that as we're talking about those systems, and as we're talking about play therapy, and as we're talking about like working with kids, yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Like getting to a place where people really understand that language and helping. And maybe that's the next question that's coming to my mind, of like, how do you help your supervisees develop that level of thinking and that level of kind of work inside of their sessions?
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, just a generic answer to that question, because everybody's so different. But I think that a big answer is, and I was going to follow up what you were saying with this as well, is that literally all you have to be is that person for them for things to change in the child's life, because they just aren't getting that one on one attention, that one on one understanding of their behaviors and the way that they're communicating outside of the session. So if they could just have that 1 hour of direct, face to face, I hear you, I understand, I care, attitude in the way that we present ourselves in the session with them. And we know it's not a pterodactyl, but they said it is. So now it's a pterodactyl outlook. That in and of itself it'll change the kid's life, period. Right. So even if you had zero training as a play therapist, just sitting with the child, giving them your attention, your one on one attention, listening to them, being there with them, supporting them, following their lead, that's huge, 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 huge. So that's really where I start with people who are like learning how to work with kids. Let's start at the basics. Can you just relate? Can you just sit with them and like, yeah, that's a pterodactyl. What's the pterodactyl say? I don't care if you ask questions. Most play therapists would disagree. But in the instance of learning, right, like let's just start here. the other thing is too, like, I don't think a lot of people understand this, but there are 17 play therapy theories. 17. And
Wow.
we often see just the child-centered play therapy, which is like just repeating back to the child, being with it. And I love child-centered play therapy. I do it myself. But there are so many different ways of being with in the play therapy room that isn't child-centered play therapy, and not a lot of people recognize that. They're mind boggled by the fact that there's like
Yeah.
17.
I would not have guessed that. I would
Yeah.
not have guessed that.
Yeah.
I think that is huge. And I think in the show notes I want to have a connection to like some of those pieces where people can dive into that work, because I do think you're right. I think that when we hear I am trained in play therapy, we think of this one model. And it's the same thing I think we do when we say we're trained in EMDR, right? Like I want to assume that everybody is trained through that EMDR, IA, EMDRIA. How you say
Uh-huh.
that? Mhm.
Yep.
I'm not EMDR trained, so like I don't know anything about it, but I think that's what I think of is like, oh, of course you've got EMDRIA, right? Or when you say that you're trained in DBT, you of course think, okay, you've gone through Linehan's stuff, right? But there are, and it's not that there are different models of DBT. There are different ways that people utilize and blah, blah, blah. But like, I think when we think play therapy, we don't think about there are also other theories. But we should, because in MFT world, not everybody's a Gottman trained therapist doing
Right.
marriage counseling, right? There are lots of different couples work kind of scenarios or family dynamic scenarios or
Uh-huh.
variety thereof relationship scenarios, right?
Uh-huh. Amen to that. I would say, it's, speaking of like the whole EMDRIA piece, I am EMDRIA approved. And I was working with a supervisee, and she's like, oh, I took an EMDR training. I was like, oh, cool. Who is it with? And she tells me, and I'm like, I don't know who that is. She's like, oh yeah, it's EMDR with EFT components. And I was like, what? Tell me more. Like, I just think that's so awesome. I had no idea. So she is teaching me, the supervisor, not the EMDR supervisor, obviously, but that there was this other modality that went hand in hand with EMDR. And I was just like, this is amazing. And this is why we need that community, because we don't know what we don't know until we know somebody who does it. And then we could just pass along, the referral or what have
Right.
those people.
Yeah, yeah, it is incredible. And I think that that is something that I try and instill in my supervisees all the time is this component of you have to stay connected in the world of people who are doing things the same as you and people who are doing things that are different than you, so that you can be challenged to learn and grow your own stuff, but also so you can know who else is doing something that is really cool that may not be your stuff. I know lots of people who work in tons of different modalities than I do, because it's just I'm not going to be the person who does yoga as a part of my physical experience with my clients,
Right.
but they're probably also not the person who is doing ERP, around entomophobia, right? Like I have a lot of like weird stuff in my office to help people who are struggling with OCD symptoms that most people maybe don't have in their office, right? Like it all depends on, it all depends on all of us really connecting with each other,
I agree.
coming back to systems,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly. I love that. I was just thinking too, like, oh my gosh, I lost my train of thought. Of course I did. I got so excited about systems therapy and systems that I just totally lost my train of thought. Oh, for me, I've seen couples in practice. I've worked with supervisees with couples and talked about couples and done all of that. I would not again in my lifetime with a 10-foot pole touch another couple in session, because it is just not my jam. I don't like it. I don't like being the referee. And that is, as a supervisor, knowing what your limits are as a supervisor to say, not my jam, supervisee, please go find a consultation group that works with couples, what have you, because this is not, I'm not going to pretend to support you in seeing this couple when I have absolutely no idea how I would even handle it in my practice. And so just knowing when to refer in that instance too, as a supervisor.
Yeah, no, that is so so important. I think that when we have had those relationship connections of like, whether it's something like I have an art therapist in my practice and me, so like we supervise here, but we have external art therapy components, or somebody in my practice is seeing a couple of couples and I don't really do couples. I can supervise couples. I just don't love supervising couples. But I have a colleague who loves couples so much. So she sees him once a month to do supervision specifically on that couple. And she comes back with these like super cool ideas and wants to share them with our community, and like just feels so energized coming out of those meetings because she's had so much time being able to dig deep into that work that she's interested in growing in, but we don't really do a lot of offering for. And I think that component really helps our supervisees learn this balance of community, that it really is more about how we all work together than it is about just doing one thing ourselves.
Right. I think it also speaks to the idea that, like, I'm not a superhuman person. I like to think I am, but I'm not. And it's okay if I don't know. It's okay to ask for help, and it's okay to, push them in a different direction. When I first became a supervisor, I was like, no, I know everything. I need to, I've got all this knowledge, and it's everything. And I had my first couple of supervisees and I was like, I do not know everything. This is hard. And I need more practice and I need more mentorship and what have you.
And talk about incredible modeling, to be able to look at them and say, oh, and by the way, like, I don't know everything. So if I don't know everything, it is also okay for you to not know everything. When your clients come in the room and they ask you a question, have you seen this? Do you know this? It's okay to be like, no, but we can learn about it together. Or I can do some research and learn about it and come back to you. And that
Yeah.
it's totally okay to not know everything in that. Like, oh,
Yeah.
I just love giving that gift, because so many of my student supervisees, especially, come in with the like that imposter syndrome of like, how could they be relying on me to know anything about what they're going through? I mean, I don't know anything. And we have to like work through all of those pieces, and to be able as a supervisor to be like, no, I don't know everything either. I got lots of resources. I got lots of different experiences, but sometimes I just have to go back to the books and find stuff out myself, or ask a colleague, or get some more mentorship.
Yeah. One of my favorite pastimes. It's not even a pastime. I still do it. But like, one of my favorite pastimes is like, you know what? I don't know that. Let me Google it for you and we do it together, because like, I don't know. Like, there are some things that I'm just not going to know. I've never experienced. I can't give you my like 2 cents on what I've experienced in my life because I've never done that. So like, let's talk about it. Let's learn together. And then boom, we both have that information, both of us at the same time.
I think that is probably one of the most key pieces of like takeaways for our time together today, is this idea of, it is number one, okay to not know, but number two, like, it's okay to just learn it together right now. And that instantaneous piece of like, you don't have to spend 4 hours outside of your supervisory meeting to come back in and be like, okay, now I'm ready to teach you. I don't need to become competent to then come back in here. We can build competence together, and that's a big part of what it means to be a professional in our industry, is building that competence as you go. I'm going through a section right now with my supervisees. A new intelligence test just got updated, and we have a year to implement it. And the really cool piece that I'm going through is having this conversation with my supervisees, students who are in school right now, and a postdoc who is, on his way towards licensure. And their first question, as I bought the test and brought it in and said, okay, let's start talking about this, was like, well, what are we going to do to build competence? And I was like, well, what do you think you need to build competence? They were like, well, obviously, like, you probably need to go back to school to like learn how to do this test. And I was like, so interestingly enough, I am not going to go pay my old university $1,500 to $2,000 to learn how to do this test that has 3 subtests that are different from before. No,
Yeah.
I'm going to read the manual. I'm going to practice it with people. I'm going to have somebody watch me to make sure that I'm doing it correctly. And then I'm going to keep practicing on it until the next one comes out. That's how we build competence. We're going to do this together. Actually, we're all going to learn it right now. And they're like, you can build competence without going to school and getting a degree. And I was like, wow, yes.
Yeah.
How do you think everybody's been doing this for like hundreds of years? But it's so important to build these connections and to know who to know. I mean, in our industry, like, for psychologists, there isn't anybody who knows more about that test except for the people who created it already. So we're all building competence together. When the new DSM comes out, we all have to read it and build competence by understanding the differences and reading and knowing those new nuances and updating ourselves on that process, right? When new things come out in play therapy, somebody else creates a new way of doing things. We all go to those seminars and webinars and learn from it, right?
Exactly. Uh, I think the title of our podcast should just be "It's Googleable," because
Yeah.
it is, and you can always find things on Google, and you can learn. I bet you can learn with AI how to do that test.
I'm sure. I'm sure. As much as that scares the bejesus out of me, I'm sure you sure could.
Same. AI is just craziness now.
It is. It is. Well, we are getting ready to wrap up. I want you to be able to talk about some of the cool things that you have going on, your podcast, supervision updates, upcoming training. So I'm going to give the floor to you for just a couple minutes and then we'll wrap up together.
Sounds good. So I do have a podcast. It's called All the Feels. It's on a bit of a hiatus, but it's pretty much everything mental health. We have, guests on there who are from medical background, not even mental health. We have CADCs, all sorts of walks of life come on our show. So a bit of a hiatus right now, but it will be back probably around summertime. I am doing a training with my dear friend Don Williamson, also a play therapist supervisor, called Play Therapy Basics and Beyond. That's going to be in March in Hood River, which I'm really excited about. Yeah, it is a 4-day intensive intro to play therapy, and it's 30 APT hours, 30 NASW hours, so it'll count towards licensure as well. And then eventually, Marianne and I are going to be doing another outdoor play therapy training. So it incorporates movement, things that are free. You don't have to buy really expensive toys to do play therapy. You can go outside and pick up leaves for all that that is shared in our training. So, and that's a 6 CE hour training. So that's going to be sometime soon. It'll be on my website as an option. And I have those who subscribe to my website are automatically informed when I have new trainings come up and about. So I also have supervision openings for supervisors of supervision of supervision, so supervision mentorship, especially for those who are looking to get their AMFT approved supervisor credentials, those who are looking for more play therapy specific supervision and for obtaining their RPT or registered play therapy credentials. And then, of course, licensure in Oregon and Washington, I have openings as well.
Amazing. Well, anybody would be so lucky to meet with you. I just feel like every session would come out with just some awesome tools or awesome techniques or just ways to really even process how they are thinking about those systems and how they're connecting those dots. Jamie, it was so wonderful to chat with you again. I hope you'll consider coming back as a guest for a part 2 at some point, because we didn't even get into working with special needs and disability folks, but I want to, because that is so, so important. So please come back if you feel so led.
Of course.
Wonderful.
Being on the show. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. All right, folks, we'll see you next time. Everybody take care.
This has been Supervision Smörgåsbord with Dr. Tara Sanderson. Please like and subscribe on your favorite podcast app. You can find us at drtarasanderson.com/podcast and on all social media at Dr. Tara Sanderson. Thank you, and we will see you next time.